All right, welcome to the second episode of WhoScape. My name's Alexandros. I'm here with Cody, aka G Busy, and our guest IAmBatman. Do you want to dox yourself? Are you okay with giving away your first name?
It's Nick.
Nick? Well, that narrows it down. There's a lot. There's not really that many Nicks in the world. It's pretty exotic. So, based
It's
on that
true.
alone, people should be able to figure out where you live. And
Some
yeah,
people think that I'm named Bruce, but we're just really good friends.
gotcha. Well, I know that Cody and I have completely differing levels of familiarity with you. You and I have known each other for a couple years now. I think this is the first time that we've actually talked. Before, I thought you were just like a bunch of chipmunks in a trench coat. But it's cool to put a face to the name.
Still not completely unproven, but
Absolutely. And I don't think Cody has the same level of familiarity with you. So, um, pretend that we don't know you at all. Like, tell us a little bit about your history with HeroScape.
with HeroScape, I think I was actually lurking back in the .NET days and for first year or so of the site, but I joined in, I believe, February of 2007. And back then, that was before the Marvel Master set was released, but there was a forum for it, right? There was a promise of it. And even more interesting, there were custom makers there. So I ended up, it was mostly Ghost Town. I think there were some old like Doc Savage customs and stuff back when he was active. But for the most part, there wasn't really anybody there except a couple of stragglers here and there. And I just started posting there a lot because it interested me, and I didn't have any skills at art or anything, but I did really bad copy and paste jobs of some image I grabbed off the internet on a card and put the blocky text in there. It's just the worst art you'd ever see. But just started meeting people there. I know Eclipse was somebody back in the day, and All Skulls, and the three of us just started chatting, and we'd look at each other's threads, and we'd comment on each other's stuff, and then we started to create rating systems and feedback guides and everything, and just kind of it went on and on from there. I could get a lot more into that, but I don't want to go on too long here.
So
So
that's
just to
so go ahead.
clarify, was that all that intro? Was that all taking place in on HeroScapers.net? You said.
No, no. I lurked back in the .NET days. We were transitioned to the current site, or earlier version of the current site, in 2006. But I was only a reader then. Yeah, and I read stuff here and there about HeroScape, and yeah, I forgot about it for a while. Came back to it, but eventually I started to get more interested and started to want to comment on things. So I joined current HeroScapers site in February of 2007.
Yeah, that's something we'll have to cover in another episode, Lex. I wasn't even aware up until Nick brought it up in our conversations prior to this that there was a .net site. I thought it was always just .com.
I,
I
I
didn't realize there was a
honestly,
predecessor.
I know a little bit about it. I don't know who you would begin to talk to about it. I don't know if
Yeah,
that's a Quozel thing or
I have to find some real old schoolers.
I
yeah,
imagine
There,
Zorloft maybe
Zorloff.
now.
Yeah, you could ask Zorloff. I'd imagine they're all
yeah,
dead
that
by
rings
now.
around.
Like they're all fossilized.
I'm pretty sure Skynight was around then, and he pokes in every once in a while.
Hmm.
Skyknight actually left us a very nice comment on our YouTube video, so I'm hoping he responds to us because we asked him to show up.
Yeah,
I would love
that's
to
a
have him
good
on and
dude.
have us tell us. That'd be the wildest curveball, right? If you have Skynet on and you're like, tell us about HeroScapers.net. And he was like, oh,
Yeah,
well, I helped with developing HeroScape. And we're like, yeah, that's cool, but everybody's made customs, so tell us about HeroScapers.net.
Rod's a pretty cool guy. Not to dox him, as you said. This is a must be a younger millennial term because I don't use that one as much. But yeah, he's a good guy. I've been to his house once. He showed me a lot of his prototype stuff from being an official playtester. It's pretty cool.
That's
Back when
very
he
cool.
was still in New York, and I was at the time too.
I got to have a cool interaction with him a couple months ago where I bought a collection and that the person who owned it was really good friends with Skyknight, and he had a bunch of customs of various users on the forums like Grunge Bob and Skyknight, and they were like figures that represented the person's avatar on the forums. So I actually
It's
like
fun.
reached out to Skyknight, and he's like, "Oh no, I still have one. You're good. You can keep it." So somewhere in my boxes, I have like a figure that's supposed to be Sky Knight, like the skeleton and the helmet,
Mm,
just like sitting and gathering dust. That's a shame. I got to figure out something to do with it. But
there you go. We got a little SpongeBob mini somewhere that
the red
is asking
GameFob,
for
right?
that
I have
type
one of
of.
those too.
Just repaint it and be all set. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned that even as far back as 2006 and 2007, you were watching people create customs threads. How did you kind of were active in the community as the game died? How did the game dying influence the customs community? To the best of your memory, I know that was 13 years ago. So
Interesting because even the idea of the game dying is not as much of an on and off switch as I think a lot of people think. Just to put in perspective, right, from my background is mostly C3G. I got active in the superheroes custom area to begin with. To an extent, that game never truly lived. Right? We got the master set with the 10 figures. We got the shelf picture of 3 of the Fantastic Four for whatever reason that we never actually got to see any of the cards.
3/4 of them,
And
yeah.
yeah, so it's kind of almost a, dead on arrival to an extent, right? Like the first 10 figures are cool and everything, and the asphalt and the concrete terrain are cool, but it was clearly never close to fully realized. I mean, the fact that C3G made 1,500 custom cards in our 1.0 version that we're now sunsetting tells you how much potential there was for that, right? So, to an extent, we had already kind of accepted SuperheroScape is dead a long time ago, and we're kind of the torchbearers for that. I think it was kind of a different thing in the Valhalla community. Customizers are more like, oh, this is a fun thing to add on or something like that. They didn't have the same level of organization as we did because they didn't have kind of the same mission statement that we did, right? We were kind of, I mean, there are a lot of individual superhero custom makers in terms of getting something anywhere near the quality of the official stuff, in my opinion, right? Um, there was no organized effort to that outside of what we were bringing in. In Valhalla, you might have had people of varying levels of seriousness about their personal customs, but there wasn't that hunger in the community for an official replacement because the official stuff was still there. Then game kind of died a slow, painful death where it started to become something different. There was a lot of controversy. I'm not sure how much y'all remember about this, but when the D&D stuff came out, a lot of people are on the fence of like, does this really feel like the same stuff? The minis didn't have the same heroic poses. Um, it was a lot narrower in terms of the theme. If you gave it a chance and you spent some time with it, there were some cool mechanics there. But even I, who had everything for Official Scape up to that point, I bought Wave 1 of D&D, and I kind of tapped out. So I was like, I think I'm good on Valhalla stuff. And part of that was, my interest in C3G too. But for me, when the official game officially stopped being published, right, there was then a vacuum. There was an interest, there was an opportunity, right? Uh, People like Griffin and Grey Owl and I, and we saw that as, okay, here's an opportunity to do something in Valhalla the way we've done something in Superheroescape. And we believed in what we'd accomplished there, and we thought, okay, it seems like there's a need for this or a desire for this in the community now that Hasbro's not going to fill. So we have an opportunity to fill it. And so we weren't the only ones with this idea. There's a small group you may have heard of called SOV that started up right around the same time, and they had a different philosophy for how to do things.
I'm sorry. So that started up right around the same time as what?
As C3V,
Okay.
I should specify that, right? Uh, Official game ends, vacuum. Some interest in the community taking on game and making it our own, right? There's that opportunity there. Something we knew how to do with Superheroescape. We wanted to try to bring some of that to Valhalla. Now, the process of doing that, we definitely talked to a lot of people, got a lot of input. tried to see how the community would like to do it. And I would argue that some of the charm of the C3G experience got lost in that translation of kind of trying to do it in a slightly different way for a slightly different group. But I'd also say that C3V has been very successful and they've accomplished a lot in their time. And I'm proud that I was a big part in bringing that into existence, I guess. But like I was saying, SOV and C3V, we were both kind of competing for that space at the beginning. We had different philosophies for how to do it, different philosophies for how to collaborate, how to get community customs to the forefront. C3V was a lot more about collaborating throughout the design process and making something as a group, which is more the C3G philosophy. Whereas SFE is more about highlighting individual designers and kind of quality checking them to make sure that they fit into the overall canon. And different people have different perspectives about each of those. I think there are drawbacks to each approach, there are benefits to each approach, and the fact that both parts of that now one group, Valhalla Customs, have survived this long shows that there is an appeal to both approaches. So I think it's cool that that's happened. But SV is not something I was ever really directly involved in, other than a lot of backroom dealings, which I'm sure Dadscaper could tell you about these too, back in the day, that helped groups become VC and help them survive. So that the idea was we don't want to compete each other out of existence. Clearly, both these groups are going to survive, so let's not eat our own tail. Let's find a way to work together. So we had a good old-fashioned business merger, which was interesting to get to.
I like to think that you had all of that scripted. Like you just went off for like 2.5 minutes there about like the entire. No, that's great.
Yeah, extemporaneous. No, not at all. I'm used to filling the silence in my classrooms. So
sure. So that inspires a bunch of questions for me, but not so we don't get too far ahead of ourselves because I know that C3G is definitely your passion and it's definitely where most of your time in the community has been. But before we get too far into that, you mentioned there were some backroom dealings, and you say Dadscaper could tell you a little about that. He actually did talk a little bit about that on our first episode, and he asked us to ask you about it. So, out of curiosity, he mentioned that there were heated phone calls, there were passionate conversations about what form different parts of the VC would take. I was just wondering, and you don't have to name drop anyone or anything, but can you kind of shed some light on what those disagreements were about? Like what got people so passionate?
I think the best way I could put it is that both groups wanted to make sure that they were respected in terms of their approach to things, their different philosophy, and that this wasn't a hostile takeover. This wasn't, one group's going to eat the other group and the other group is going to cease to exist type of thing.
Okay.
I think ultimately, yeah, we helped each other a lot in terms of creating a shared canon, which there was debate about what that would mean and how to accomplish that without taking away the autonomy of one group or the other. And shared resources too, which theoretically means things can get through the varying processes faster. I could probably go on a whole spiel about the efficiency of processes for VC versus C3G, but we also have very different goals, so it's okay.
Well, I think for both groups, a lot of it has been iterative improvement, at least as far as I've seen, right? Where, for both of you, you're 13 to 14 years down the road at this point. So obviously things don't look like they did, day one. If you were to look at C3G and what you understand of VC now, well, let me phrase this question a different way. So, as I understand it, C3V was kind of modeled organizationally after C3G at the time, right? I think Dadscaper had mentioned that.
Yes and no.
No? Oh, okay. Yes and no, I see.
Yes, in terms of we had certain things that we tried to accomplish through a design process, right? We had a certain time that we did playtesting. We had a certain time that we did editing. We had a certain time that we did art. A lot of the phases had similar names. A lot of the voting was done in similar ways. But C3V, in terms of its processes, was set up to be a lot more Brithian, I think, than C3G, and to divide the power into a lot more specialized roles. In C3G, basically, you have the main members, you have the heroes, and it's a little bit more complicated than that sometimes, but the main people who are starting designs, playtesting those designs, voting on those designs through the process, uh, editing those designs, getting those designs on cards, and saying those designs are ready to release. Right? We might have a dozen people active at any time, and of those, probably 6, 7, 8 are heroes who do the bulk of the voting, are responsible for following everything, and do a lot of the playtesting. We also have kind of semi-retired heroes called legends who can do a lot of those things, and we get a lot of playtesting resources from the public and let them do some designing. But one of the big things is that if you're a lead designer on a card, you're shepherding it through the whole process. You are the CEO for that specific design. It still has to be approved by a certain group of people working with you, but I think it's a lot smaller group of people who are consistently following the same design throughout the process. I think we tend to have pretty good throughput as a result of that. When I set up C3V, because I designed the architecture of the original group, I think I honestly took some bad advice from some community members, so I won't name because they're my nemesis. But the mandate Grunge Bob gave us, and he's not the nemesis here, by the way. But the mandate Grunge Bob gave us was make sure that as many people can be involved as want to be involved, right? So we try to set that up in a way that was private from the public, to give it that kind of surprise release feel, give it that space to work feel that we had realized every time we wanted in C3G when we went to a sanctum, which that lost us some members back in the day, by the way. That was the whole contentious thing. R.I.P. Valin. But in doing that, I wanted to make sure there were enough roles for people. So I got it in my head through that, like I said, bad advice, that we should have specialized roles, right? These people will be the design team. These people will be the playtesting team. These people will be the editing team. These people will be the art team. These people will be the big picture executive review board. What I realized during my time there, however, and I know they've shifted things since I was there, they do things differently now. They've figured out something that works for them. But through a lot of my time there, it basically was a lot of tiny fiefdoms, right? The design team, pretty much they'd be the ones who'd pay attention to it. They'd move it to the next level. Then you'd have the executive review board, and they're supposed to review it and make sure that the aesthetics make sense for the game. But to be honest, everybody wants to design, so we'll do a little design work here too, and kind of put our own tweaks on it. Once you got to the point where editing was basically doing design work, that you start to realize that there was a too many cooks problem, and the cooks are in different places, and they're not always on the same page. They're contradicting each other. They're pulling and pushing in different directions, and oftentimes there's a design that's dumped from this area to that area. Nobody's leading it through the process. Nobody's attached to it the whole way through, which I think they've addressed some of that. I haven't followed C3V like I used to, but I know during a lot of the time I was there was a lot of problem with things getting stalled out or not having throughput, and I think that was due to a lack of one person really driving the train for that individual design. And then play testing is always a holdup for things. The two hardest resources when it comes to custom communities are art and playtesting. Probably not in that order, but you need people who will actually visually put things on the cards, and you need people who are willing to test things.
It's really crazy how many people love this game and find reasons not to play it.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted just to theoryscape all day, write things down, and get attention for it. Everybody wants to design custom cards if they're in a custom project. They only live if people will test them.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that's kept C3G thriving for so long. We've gotten better and better at attaching playtesting to designing and to creating a culture of that, right? If you're going to design for the group, if you're going to be part of that, it's because you're somebody who plays the game, somebody who tests what you do. Because if you don't, your stuff gets stalled out. Always going to do it for you.
Yeah. That's actually something that, not to derail too far on this, I know that's something that Shiftrex and I both took from C3G, is really having people who take ownership for a design in NGC. And that's been a huge deal for us. And it was really interesting for me, at least last week when we spoke to, was that 2 weeks ago? I don't know. Time is an illusion. But 2 weeks ago now, when Cody and I spoke to HeroScapers, it was really interesting to see that that's not really so much the process in C3V. And that's fine. It's, it's a different project.
Listen, I am responsible for a lot of that. But would I set it up that way again if I were starting it now? No, I wouldn't. I would probably go for a lot more of a C3G model. The problem is you have a lot more than, 7 or 8 people who want to be active over there. It seems like the C3G model is a small number of really active people whose pants are lit on fire all the time, versus, C3V, you have a lot more kind of interested, but people who are kind of 1 foot in. They do great work, right? Part of their speed of production is also about their goals, right? They want tournament ready, competitive to that extent stuff. C3G, we're just a bunch of mad scientists throwing crap at the wall and seeing what we can get away with and how much we can bend the game, right? We're chasing fun. And
Right.
we're,
I think that's
So,
the important
yeah.
distinction to make, honestly, between especially C3V, and this is from an outsider's perspective again, since I've actually never played with a C3G unit, although I'm going to try one as soon as we're done with this sometime soon.
Yep.
So, but would you say, with that in mind, what is that?
Superman Batman robot, one of my favorites.
That's pretty sick looking. I do remember seeing you guys did a Galactus, right?
Yeah,
Two.
I've got a Galactus up on my shelf.
I do remember seeing that.
Name up there.
That thing's
somewhere.
huge.
Yeah, it is.
But I think that is a very important distinction, though, is that C3V, I feel like, I guess, I don't know if you would be able to find these numbers, or if you have an idea of what the failure rate is for like a C3G unit versus a proposed C3V unit. But I feel like, I've never been inside those doors, but I feel like C3V probably shoots down a lot more designs than C3G does. They're more picky.
I think SOV probably shoots down the most of all, but
oh yeah,
it's a lot easier to say no to something that isn't designed by your actual group.
Right.
If kind of America's Got Talent feel to them sometimes, I think that I have mixed feelings on, but they've stuck around.
If I can chime in for just a second, as somebody who has only been through the design process briefly, to me it seems like something that makes C3G unique is there's a how do we get to yes philosophy, right? Where it in my experience, for the most part, the attitude at C3G hasn't been your idea is bad and we don't want to do it. It's been how, like, I think we can workshop this into something that works in C3G.
I think there's a few different things that go into that, though, as well, right? One is we usually have great source material to work from, right? If you want to have an argument about how should Batman be carded, everybody knows who Batman is. Everybody knows how Batman acts. We have tons of source material for what Batman does that helps us to kind of create a shared vision to translate him. Whereas, how should a Hydra act? Other than, you cut off one head, you grow 2 more. I don't know, right? It's a lot here in a lot of ways. Different dragons and different lore been translated in different ways over time. Everybody has their own idea of what one should be like, right? In a way, translated pirates. I gotta tell you, not my version of pirates. I think a lot of people in the community, when we wanted pirates for a long time, that's not what they had in mind. But it's a perfectly reasonable take on pirates, right? A lot of people, when they put pirate customs on scapers, has been more focused on water, but then how many maps have like giant pools of water, and how relevant is that to the metagame, right? So it's a lot uh, more difficult from a source material perspective, I think, a lot of the time. Another thing is, I know one of the things that tanks designs so often over at C3V is mini availability. And one of the things that's helped C3G thrive through our entire 1.0 run is HeroClix put out pre-painted minis that were cheap as hell. Right? And we could all buy a whole ton of them, made it really easy and accessible to get into the game. Yeah, I mean, we dipped our toes into mods sometimes and to figures from other lines. I mean, eventually we'll a Megazord, right? But for the most part, HeroClix, tons of HeroClix, right? And I got HeroClix all over the place here of varying costs and stuff, right?
I
Got
love
my
that Krakoa figure, and it fills me with hope that you own one
Merkle.
because I haven't seen a card for it.
One of these days, I gotta do some X-Men scenarios eventually. But
I think that figure
anyway,
is great.
yeah, no, I'm gonna bring it to con in hopes that I can sell people and making it one of the promo designs. So we'll see what happens.
I own one, and it's completely useless to me, but I don't want to ever get rid of it. I just love the way it looks.
Yeah, but I mean, to bow on my point here, at least though, for C3V, mini availability, especially pre-painted minis that have the numbers that they want to have to make sure they're available for tournaments, because a lot of things are tournament focused. That they're affordable to people, so they're not pricing people out of the tournament scene, because that tournament acceptance is their golden goose. That's hard, right? A lot of times an idea will dry up in the pipeline because the minis they thought they have are gone, right? And that's why there's frustrations about the ability to do different themes that they want to do. There's difficulty with throughput sometimes because the minis will go before they've had a chance to announce them.
Sure.
There's all sorts of issues like that, whereas minis are abundant for us. And by the way, in 2.0, completely taking that shackle off. We're going mini agnostic. We're not going to have hit zones on our cards, and you can proxy with whatever you like, because the whole point, the whole philosophy of C3G is we're making stuff to be played and to have fun with.
Yeah, we have a great example we can point to of C3V. Just this past week, they released in the public disclosure thread. I can't remember exactly what it's called. C3V public announcements. Yeah. They announced that new squad that's going to be. It goes along the theme of Motley Max. It's like a Mad Max style apocalypse, whatever. And I saw that Vidar 43, who's a member of C3V, he said that it would have been a 4-man squad had one of the figures still been readily available, but it wasn't. So it had to be a 3-man squad. And I think that's such a shame that you have to change a design so much based on mini availability. That sucks. Yeah.
That actually brings up another good point about the differences between the groups. I looked it up just now in our sortable index for 1.0. I think out of the 1,500-ish cards that we're going to end up with in our 1.0 library, 56 of them are squads.
Wow.
So, I mean, let those percentages sink in. Yeah, we have some common heroes and things like that too, but I think part of the mini availability difficulty for C3V is, okay, squads have to have figures that look different sculpts. Can't have them all be the same, because what would Hasbro do, right? WWHD is their guiding principle. So they have to meet that aesthetic in order to be taken seriously. They have to be pre-painted. We have to have the availability of these 4 figures in enough numbers. People can each have multiples of them. I mean, that's such a tall task to reach. Whereas for us, it's like, oh, look, Poloids. We'll make them common heroes that are 10 points each, and you can buy dozens of them from HeroClix. Cool, we're good.
Well, part of them is just
move along.
Part of the issue is just that it's a different game, at least in terms of feel. I've often described C3G as, your army costs 3 times as much, and it probably has a third as many figures as in Classic. Right? Each figure matters more. but you're not likely to run into duplicates in the same way.
What's a standard, maybe average number of figures that you'd have in your start zone for Valhalla, would you all say?
I'd say like 16 to 18 usually, something like that.
What do you think, Lex, for C3G? 4 to 8?
Yeah, I would say 4 to 6 if you're not playing commons or squads, and that's a lot of the starter armies people are going to reach for don't.
Right? Yeah, anything
for your Teen Titans.
Anything under 10 in HeroScape would be a very limited format, I would say, usually, unless you have some type of weird army.
Two of my favorite playtesting armies for 2.0. Fantastic Four figures, obviously. And the JLA Trinity with Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. 3 figures.
Yep.
Let's Lex, don't spoil this. Cody, how much do you think each of those armies is in terms of points?
I had to guess. Let's see. 800 points?
1,000.
1,000. Wow. Okay, yeah, that was my second guess.
That's a fair close answer though for someone who's definitely blind.
So 1,000 is probably the most common point level that C3G is played at. Kind of base a lot of our meta around 1,000 point armies. There's flexibility within that. Galactus, the one I led the design for, cost like 1,500 or 1,600 in 1.0.
Right.
So we go over that. Beyonder, I think, was the highest we ever did. He was over 2,000 points and convinced me that we don't need to ever go over 2,000 points again, because it was that finally was a limit for me. But and then we have stuff that costs 5 points, right? So we go all along the gamut. But for the most part, half a dozen figures at most. Usually unique heroes. Plenty of 1,000 point event heroes that are an army in and of themselves. But yeah, there's less of a burden on the minis because we use fewer minis, but at a lot higher point levels.
So I'm trying not to ask questions that make it seem like I already know the answer. But I know that's tricky because the way it's tricky because of C3G is pretty open with what it is, right? So if you're around for some period of time, you kind of get a lot of it. But would you say that C3G kind of sets itself apart by having a different target audience than a lot of other custom projects?
Yes, because I think other custom projects have a target audience. Our target audience is ourselves. You want to make stuff that we're going to play. That's really the bottom line. And there's some philosophy there that if we don't like playing with it, then who else is going to? And that theoretically, if we do like playing it, other people might. But honestly, if we weren't doing it for ourselves, we wouldn't keep doing it because it wouldn't be fun.
And I've definitely seen that in some of the discussion around C3G, and that sometimes there are things that members of C3G would be okay with. It's just that they're not sure who would champion it, right? Like an example I've seen people loosely discuss is like Kingdom Hearts as a property, right? I've seen somebody suggest that and be like, yeah, I have a draft, but I wouldn't want to do 6 different designs from this, and I don't know anybody internally who would.
It is a lot easier to build factions if you've got 2 or 3 people hopping on and all spearheading designs and leading them. Playtesting is a resource, right? And our standard is we'll have our initial playtest from usually the person running the design because they wanted to move forward. And then we're going to have 2 or 3 playtests from other people before we move that forward, right? So sets of playtests. So if nobody else is excited about the property that you're chasing, you're going to have a lot of stuff really slow in public playtesting. Not C3V slow, but slow for us, right? I'm just good shots now. I love y'all C3V.
We're gonna have Dadscaper back on next week to defend himself.
Boy,
right? It's a debate format. Yeah. No, but something that really struck me as interesting for C3G, and I want to be careful because I mean this in a good way, but I understand how it could be interpreted.
Oh, dare you!
C3G almost, it kind of seems like a lot of the diehards are like the boys hanging out with the boys. And I don't mean that in like I don't mean it's exclusive, right? Because I really feel that anybody who wants to be involved can create that path, right? but there is a more low key, like, these are people who know each other. They know the kind of things that you all like you all know the kind of things that you guys like to play. You're designing to play with each other mostly, and your families and your play groups. And to me, that seems like it's a more. I don't want to say it's a more anything. It's a different design experience than someone like C3V or SOV or even NGC designing for people that they don't know at all, right? Like, obviously, there are like people who say that they play C3G and you don't know them, right? And that comes up, but it seems less common than it does with some of the other custom projects.
We'll point out, got to get my millennial wokeness in here, that we do have female members, so it's not just a group of boys. That said, the way I would put what I think you're sensing is that a lot of these projects are projects that are focused on doing the project, and that are part of a larger community social group where the project is part of what they do. C3G is the social group that sometimes pays attention to the rest of HeroScapers of the community. Sometimes sees what's going on with the away campaign and gets scared and snarky behind closed doors. But we mostly keep it to ourselves because we're friends, right? We're a social group. In less than a week, I'll go to Tennessee, 14 of us, and we'll meet in a big house and we'll drink and we'll play games and have a tournament. I've got a couple of trophies from past ones. Woo woo. And it'll be C3G Con 4, and there's going to be a fifth one next year because it's the highlight of my year.
Sure.
When I got COVID and couldn't go last year, only time I've gotten COVID, I was so pissed. A week before con, it was terrible. It ruined my year. But it's because our focus is fun and it's collaboration, it's socialization, and sometimes we get in our feelings and we get passionate about different designs. We get on each other's nerves, but we're kind of a big family. So yeah, I think there definitely is a different ambiance to the group because it is as much a social group as a project at this point.
So you put it much better than I would, but just to clarify, do you remember the old like Sinister Six memes where it was like me and the boys? Cody, do you remember? You're younger. You probably remember what I'm talking about.
I don't, honestly. I don't.
Man, I'm gonna have to like stitch one in here. It's like the
DC guy, so
it's like the '60s Spider-Man cartoon, and it's like these really like not crude, like they're offensive, but they're just like very low energy.
Like Hulking.
Like Electro, Rhino, Vulture, and the Green Goblin. And it's always like me and the boys hoping that we'll be in the next Spider-Man together, or like just something stupid like that. To me, that's more the energy I meant, not no girls allowed when I said boys club. So I understand why you clarified that way, but I wanted to be clear that that's not what I meant.
I haven't seen that meme, but I get the archetype that you're talking about, though.
Yeah. You know, the cracking open a cold one with the boys kind of energy.
Yeah.
There's definitely some of the energy in the group, but we do try to be welcoming to anybody who's interested in joining. But you know, like any good project, you get as much out of it as you put into it. And I think the people who really end up hanging out is because we invest so much time in it, we put so much energy into it, we're so passionate about it, and we spend a lot of time around each other. But just to illustrate that kind of social group thing, you know, half the time I keep Discord open all day, and I'm mostly talking on C3G for it, not on other Discords, and you know, keep the HeroScapers forum open all day, and you know, I'm probably going through 20, 30 threads a day. I'm telling you all, 50% of my 100 whatever thousand posts are just me putting yay for a vote. You know, if I'll have a question about something during the day, right? Now that we're pretty active on Discord, we'll just fire stuff off here and there and chat about all sorts of designs and thoughts or rules, questions, etc. Because we're always trying to stretch what's possible for the rules in HeroScape, and even pretty much writing our own rules at this point. But you know, I'll fire a question out, and there's a pretty high percentage chance that 80% of the responses I'm going to get are going to be smart-ass jokes. And you know, there'll be 20% that'll be helpful, then we'll have a conversation. But it's just kind of the environment that we have.
And I really listening to the spiel earlier about, you know, going to C3G Con and Tennessee and whatnot. It sounds like the perfect microcosm of what the overall HeroScape community is. like this tight knit, like the HeroScape community at large is that way. Although it's different because you're dealing with hundreds, if not thousands, of people versus probably a little under 1,000, but as opposed to a dozen to 2 dozen people. But that sounds awesome, honestly.
Yeah. And we've had a lot of people come and go over the years. Whether they were a founding father who then got struck by a car. Sorry, Lex, I know too soon. But Mark B.
Only
Mark
one?
B'd right out. I know, right? It's rookie numbers. Got to get those numbers up.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had Mark B, who infamously got hit by a car about a week into us starting the project, and then he just disappeared. And then he came back, I don't know, maybe a year later, and he's like, "Oh my God, look at all you've done." He never was really active after that. Or Griffin obviously was a huge name in the group in the early days. We've gone through so many people over the years, though. The project wouldn't be the same without them. And honestly, every time we lost a major person, I was shocked that we survived. Right? We lost Grail, who was our art department, but A3N stepped up and carried the torch. We lost Tickle, who was a huge member, but he nuked the Discord on his way out. But we made a new one, right? And we survived. Lots of people over the years, but so many people who are there active in the group now have really helped it survive. Have picked up the torch and gone with it, and it continues to surprise me how it thrives. But yeah, I'm the only original member left, right? I made the post that said, "Hey, should we do this group?" And for some reason, people got on board and hung out together and did stuff. And over the years, I think that the spirit of the group has attracted more and more of the type of people that I think are really fun to hang out with. So I guess it reflects that to an extent.
I want to be careful asking this because I don't want to inspire drama here, and I know you wouldn't either. Would you say it's fair to say that kind of the climate after I won't name that person, right? That you guys lost someone, and to me it seemed like it really reignited and focused the climate in C3G. But I'm not as inside as you are, so would you say that that's a fair description
I would
of what happened?
say that the history of the group, what have we been around 13, 14 years? The history of the group has been one of hills and valleys to a large extent, right? Passions run strong. When Griffin more or less rage quit, when back in the day, him and I we were driving the group. It just is what it is, right? I did individual tests on the first Batman figure 20, 30 times in a row just to
Why do
prove
you
to
like
people
him,
that
or-
he was balanced at 200 points, right? Griff and I would burn up our phones talking to each other all night, brainstorming every character you'd ever heard of, right? There's a reason that he has 30,000 posts and he hasn't been active in forever, right? Him and I were tearing things up with that. And there were other people involved and they were important to the group. But him and I were really kind of the band leaders for a long time. And he kind of, ended up falling out. He got angry about some things. I think he was maybe over leveraging and not having balance in his life at the time. He had a lot of small children. I wish him all the best. I don't know what's going on with him right now. But yeah, he ended up kind of getting in his feelings and piecing out of the group. And, that was a huge loss for us. Thought that was going to be really, really hard for us to get through. He was one of our most consistent designers, playtesters, posters, commenters, strongest opinions, had most initiative for taking things on. He showed all sorts of initiative for starting this thing or that thing. He was full of great ideas all the time. Very high energy guy, fun to hang out with. And then more Griffin, right? Stuff like that is hard. Grail being the person who started our art department and then just kind of being off into the sunset was hard, right? Had to pass that torch to somebody. We lost some members when we went into a sanctum. We lost some members when we made this decision or that decision, right? I could list so many names of users who were a big part of the group and then moved on to something else, whether it's Hama or Johnny139 or lazy orang or et cetera, right? So the person Lex is referring to is just one of the latest in that, right? Um, Group survived me not being around for a year, right? I got laid off and I had to search for jobs, and pretty soon my wife was pregnant. And I kind of had all these things going on in the rest of my life. I thought, okay, maybe it's time for me to do my retirement, for me to move away from this group. And I did for like a full year, right? And this was an admin of HeroScapers. Another great name that is huge for the group that has since moved on, Scape Mage. Scape Mage pulled me back in. Um, they started this program that said, hey, former heroes can come join and they can design stuff. We called our Legends program. And now we have Legends. We're big about branding in C3G. But that pulled me back in. It's like, oh, I don't have to have all the responsibility of a hero. I could just have some of the fun and design stuff and test stuff. Cool, I'm in. And then we're in, I'll be honest, a little bit of a lull period when I was gone. It's hard to replace 100,000 posts. But, there were people trucking along, Arkham and Ronan and Japes and so many people. They were keeping the flames lit, but it was slow, right? There weren't as high a speed of production. There weren't as many playtesters around. There wasn't as much excitement. But then we kind of went on a little boom when I came back. Then we had some other lulls, right? And then, during COVID, we got on the Discord. We started all realizing, hey, we're shut in the house all the time. We started playing a tabletop simulator. We went through another huge boon. The person Lex was mentioning was part of that. He was a huge part of that. He was a great part of that. And then some things didn't work out, and he left. He went his own way. And I don't think that was really a lull. If there was a lull leading up to that, it might have been because there was a fair amount of angst amongst the group. Anytime you have a kind of tight-knit social group that does a lot of collaboration, there's going to be angst sometimes. And if one person starts acting out in bad ways, you're going to have to figure out how to deal with that angst. And sometimes there's a relief when that person leaves, right? In this case, this person who was doing a lot of the work for the group was inspiring things. It was a lot like Griffin back in the day, right? And I thought, oh man, that's going to be really tough for us to recover from. We're really going to miss that. And you know what? To say it, we haven't. We haven't. Not in terms of our production, not in terms of our passion, not in terms of our energy, because other people have stepped up and they brought that. Though I will say a huge part, I think, of where we're at in terms of our energy right now, post that period, is 2.0. Right? We said, okay, we've done 1,500 plus cards for C3G 1.0. We've learned a lot of things. This has been an incredible test kitchen for us. Incredible beta testing period. And if we're looking back, there's so many characters that we're passionate about that, I don't know. I don't know if this card is good enough for them, or this one is kind of too strong, or the metagame is in a weird place where this rando character is one of the best characters, and this important character is kind of one of the worst characters. And also, why does HeroScape use the word move to mean 15 different things mechanically? I don't love that. And we started to dig more and more into these conversations, and then just because I like to start shit, I said, push for it. I pushed for doing 2.0. And I got people on board with me, and there were a lot of people who were interested in it already independently of me, and we said, okay, we're gonna do a new edition of this. And we got a huge rule book of our own with a beautiful glossary full of terms. There's a transition phase. There are move actions, special move actions, all sorts of fun stuff. We've kind of changed the language to fit what we want more. I think y'all have seen some of the cards. You can tell me what you think of it. I think it's better. I think it's better language. I think it's clearer. As somebody who was on our rules committee for a long time and really struggled to answer some of the rules that were built on how HeroScape language worked, I think that we've added clarity to how interactions work. We've added a little bit more terminology to do that. It's maybe a little bit more of a learning curve to get it initially. I think things are a lot more understandable on the back end, and I'm proud of the efforts we put into that. And it's really reignited our design space, right? Because at a certain point when you're 1,500 cards in, right? We have 4 versions of Superman or something. We have like 30 Spider-Men from the Spider-Verse. At a certain point, you get into more and more niche characters or niche IPs, and I think the collective excitement starts to die down. There's not as much mechanical space to explore anymore because we've done so many crazy things already. Um, I think my own passion was starting to die down a little bit before we decided to make that leap. But since then, love it, right? Because you get to go back and evaluate everything you did in 1.0 and say, how can we make this even better for this new version? How can we make it clearer? How can we make it more fun, more balanced? How can we revisit these most popular characters and make them more enjoyable, make more cohesive teams and factions? And what new mechanical space can we explore with things like faction tags and resistances and weaknesses to damage types, and keywords? All these kind of new mechanics that we just sprinkled on top of the HeroScape system.
And I want to get back to this, and I'm sure Cody really wants to ask some 2.0 questions. Real quick, while we're talking about unit erratas and fixes, justice for my boy Punisher. We did him dirty. Second, I know that we want to jump into 2.0, but I think that's probably the second half, quote unquote, of this. We did get some requests to ask some casual personal questions after last time. So if you're all right, I want to fire a couple at you.
Yep.
All right. So I feel like we know the answer to favorite DC hero. What's your favorite Marvel superhero? Or Marvel character? Doesn't matter.
Technically, favorite DC hero, Tim Drake Robin.
Okay.
Pre-New 52, I haven't really followed him since. They tried to just erase him for a while there as Robin.
Sure.
That's my boy. Sorry, what was the question?
What was that?
What was the initial question?
Oh, favorite Marvel character.
For Marvel character, a tough one. Look at my wall. Probably liked of the MCU movies. I probably liked Captain America's movies the best, but I'm not sure if that's because of him as a character or just the quality of the movies. Loki's definitely a fun one. It's tough. I think Shadow King might be my favorite Marvel card that I've done.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe Spider-Man. I'm gonna go Spider-Man.
All right, that's a great answer. I would agree. You said that's your favorite Marvel card. When you were working in Classic, did you have a favorite design you did?
Oh, when I was working with C3V?
No, just Classic at all. Did you do Classic customs outside of C3V?
Really didn't. I think I had a couple of just a couple of random customs here and there. I think I did some Nazi customs back in the day because I'm like, we should be able to fight evil Germans, and then I probably wouldn't revisit that now. I don't know. That's a whole hot button topic for y'all. The place of evil historical designs.
Yeah.
They fought for Udgar, just in case you were wondering. Was not saying that they were heroes by any means. Who would want to play them? I'm like, I'll play Red Skull and the Hydra Troopers. They're basically the same thing, just more colorful. I'm trying to think. I was a big part of spearheading the Pathfinders and John Varan, which Captain John Varan is named after Grey Owl. Upon my suggestion, so that's an homage to him. Technically, he, Griffin, and I were the founding fathers of C3V in terms of we're the ones who initially set it up with Grunge Bob's approval. Then we got a lot of people on there. I wouldn't say we're by any means the most important people in the existence of that group. We certainly don't carry the torch now and haven't for a long time, but the three of us were kind of the ones who got the ball rolling over there. So I thought it was cool to do an homage to him. I was a big part of Haddock. Some of those, original ones have kind of some of my aesthetic and influence on them, which, of course, Haddock also is an homage figure for Colby Dodge. Truth, aka. I think what else? Josie Whistlestop was one I was at least part of the initial part of. She's named after my now dead cat. I just like to name things after people. Yeah, I'd say the eighth, the Pathfinders and Captain John Varan are probably the ones that I like the most. I like the whole kind of World War II soldier faction
seems like there's a
of
link
Valhalla. Yeah. Airborne Elite are probably my favorite squad. No, Valhalla.
Okay.
So that's what that's part of.
So
I always want that passion expanded.
I feel like I know the answer before I ask it, but you said that you, Griffin, and Grey Owl were kind of the three founding members. I know what Grey Owl's kind of vanity unit was, right? Like the unit designed after him as an homage almost. Did you and Griffin also have similar units?
After I left, I believe they thought this was really funny. They made a certain vampire named after me, Nick Essenwine. It's like, haha, because he's a bat. I was like, all right, you guys, you're clever. Um, so I will forever be Team Krill now, and he's my boy. So Nick Essenwine for life.
You're dropping some serious facts on me tonight. I didn't know any of this. That's awesome.
Yeah. And Griffin, I believe there have been conversations about trying to create a Griffin, actual literal Griffin unit.
Sure.
But mini availabilities made that difficult. And I think that over the years there's been some debate on whether or not they want to do an homage to my former friend Griffin. I think that the background he put on his avatar before he didn't deliver on a sale or trade on the site, and then I booted him off, did not do well for his reputation. Fun being an admin, you get to kick out your friends.
I don't think I was aware that Griffin was not currently on the site.
He might be allowed back again. I'm not sure if it was a perma ban or not. It's been a while. It's been thankfully a while since I've had to ban anybody. I did also ban Anakara.
Who?
Anakara used to be one of our highest posters. Also very good at not following through with trades.
Oh.
So,
Gotcha.
that's kind of frowned upon. That's one thing that'll get you booted off the site is we don't like people taking advantage of people who are trying to buy or sell things from them.
Right.
That's a pretty big no-no. By the way, anytime that I brought the ban hammer down on somebody, it wasn't just me doing it. Like I may have actually gone through with the actions of it just because I was around, but it's always a conversation between the admins before we decide to do something like that.
I'm not sure if you remember this, but the way that we crossed paths was me stirring some stuff up on Discord, and I don't even remember what it was about. I was probably doing something stupid. This was back when AOA was first announced, so there was a bunch of excitement and whatnot. And I was new to the Discord too, new to Discord period actually. And I just remember.
Do we still have a politics channel then, or had they already nuked that?
That was there, and I was closed shortly thereafter. Yeah, the AOA people flooded in, and we had to get rid of that.
What? Yeah. Wasn't it before AOA that happened? Because I remember
it might have been
that last conversation.
Might have been slightly before.
But
Nick nods his head in frustration.
When AOA hit is when I decided that I needed to retire as an admin of the HeroScapers Discord. It wasn't for me. I needed to be an independent operator on that. I had enough responsibilities.
Were there difficulties in the HeroScape community when AOA launched?
Yeah.
It's hard to conceptualize. It was so long ago.
I thought it best to stay in my C3G corner and Discord and just stick with the adminning on the site. I didn't need any part of the... They invited me to Facebook admin. I said, no, thank you. Or as they say in the South, as we say down here, bless your heart. Bless your heart, Quazzle and Dysol, for taking that on.
No, I think they still have an open position for that, if I remember correctly.
I actually think that the Facebook group probably got the worst of it after AOA launched. It's just that Discord moved so fast the quality of new posts on Facebook was so much worse, but on Discord you were just barraged with it all the time. It was a rough time.
Facebook is uniquely positioned to breed toxicity compared to other places where the group, community lives.
Yeah. So, last thing I want to bring up here before I know Cody wanted to ask some questions about 2.0. It's actually really funny that you mentioned like people being in and out of the group and hills and valleys. I was, for an unrelated reason, I was digging through my post history, and this is embarrassing to admit, but I've been on HeroScapers since I was 12, and at one point I posted like I was 12 years old on the internet, which is bad.
Me too, but I was born in 1982, so
Sure. So the moral of that story is don't give 12-year-olds unfettered access to the internet. But the reason I bring this up is because like I found posts where I was like asking how to get involved with C3G like right after the World's Finest Master set, and then I found posts trying to get involved with another custom project that I guess at the time was at odds with C3G. And the reason this is funny to me is because like the thread was you arguing with this guy who later, as I understand it, became a pretty important part of C3G anyway. So it's just interesting, like, and that was Scaper Mage. So it's just interesting
Escape
like,
Mage.
how much history there is with people moving in and out, and these things kind of come full circle. And
That was, I believe, the not derivatively named at all CMD. Um,
and I was
the
clueless. I
comic.
just wanted to help out because I was 13 and I like superheroes.
Well, Escape Mage was pretty young at the time too. I think he was also in his early teens. But yeah, he ended up sticking around, and he was a little petulant at the time and headstrong and wanted to do things his way and not kind of work within a community collaboratively within the guidelines we set up. But he came around. He's a good guy. Yeah, no, I think I still am friends with him on Facebook, but as much as I try to get him to come back to the group, he won't. But he pulled me back in, right? He started that Legends program, and I probably wouldn't be in C3G today or for the last 7 years if not for him. So kudos to Escape Mage.
So Cody, I know you're coming from the perspective of somebody who doesn't know a ton about C3G, but you had some questions about 2.0, right?
Well, I have a very general question. Two questions. So one is, so as someone that my knowledge of C3G just started about an hour and 15 minutes ago, or however long we've been going, where would you direct someone like myself? I'm sure we have some viewers that are going to have this question as well, to start. Should we start with 1.0 and if so, where, or should we wait for 2.0 to come out and see what that's all about?
I'm biased, but if you're really interested in terms of fostering long-term interest, love. I think 2.0 is going to be worth the wait, and it's not going to be that long a wait. This isn't a go ahead and buy this figure. It'll be out in 14 months. We have, I think, all but one card of our starter deck done. We have a full draft of our rule book that's in the process of being put into art. We're about to have our con. I believe we will have it out this summer. I would look at the end of August for it to come out. It might be a little bit longer than that, but we'll be shocked if it's not out this year.
So you're gonna beat
point.
Renegade. You're gonna beat Renegade releasing any HeroScape. That's for sure.
No doubt, no doubt. As long as you're willing to pledge $2 million right now, we'll probably release it anyway.
So okay, so and what you were saying earlier about sprinkling on rules, when you were going through that, sprinkle on rules on top of the foundation of HeroScape, as we all know it. It sounded like you were saying things like resistance, and I don't know what the other word you were using, but I'm a weakness. Okay, I'm an outside viewer of Warhammer. I like the lore, but I would just never get into the game because it's toxic and I don't know. It seems like a lot. It seems like a lot to get into that game. Whereas HeroScape's pick up and play. Do you worry that maybe you're getting a little too crunchy with the rules going to the 2.0 route?
And just before you answer this real quick, Nick, at any point I can put some of those cards on the screen. Just let me know.
Sure, yeah.
So-
You can throw some of those up if you want to now. My short answer on that is that ship sailed a long time ago when we started activating figures on X order markers and creating event heroes that were their own category of things, and making story cards that are basically draftable scenarios, and creating equal destructible objects, right? That your figures can get into and pilot, right? Uh, you've never been afraid of innovation standing in the way of accessibility. Um, um, that said, we definitely aim for a degree of elegance. Yeah, I would say there's a difference between complexity and crunchiness and elegance, right? Um, power sets of a C3G card, and part of this is their higher cost points, and there's lower number of figures in your army. The power sets, and because they're superheroes, so thematically it makes sense. The power sets are much more complicated, right, than your standard Valhalla figure. I can't play Valhalla at this point. Like, no, all party all, but it'd kind of be like for one of you playing the basic game, right? Um, plus, Squadscape and HeroScape are very different games in terms of how they play. It's not, I'm going to move my troops in mass and try to position everything. There's a lot. It's a very different feel. And a lot more of that is about the interactions of the abilities and things like that. So I would argue that, if that's a concern, we're probably already past that. That said, um, there has been a lot of very careful debate about trying to make sure that the touches that we do have maintain a sense of elegance, right? Like here, the faction tag up here, right? Fantastic Four at the top there. I don't think that's even anything we're using mechanically. In this case, for a Human Torch, it's more of a thematic sorter. So a new user might say, "Oh, I bet this plays well with other things in the Fantastic Four," which, by the way, it does. Um, sometimes we'll use them as synergy hooks, and we'll say, uh, Captain America adds +1 to the attack of allies, and so while there's a revealed order mark on this card, allied Avengers in clear side of Captain America have +1 attack and defense. That probably is going to get changed to allies in the Avengers faction, by the way, because we spell out when it's a faction the first time. And then little keywords: patriotic, super soldier. They're not complex. They're just tags that you can draw on for synergies. I don't think we've used either of those right now, but we might someday, right? Maybe there'll be a bad guy who comes along and says, he gets to do extra wounds against super soldiers, or he can mind control super soldiers or something, right? Or Uncle Sam, right? For each patriotic figure, or each figure in your army with the patriotic keyword, he gets +1 attack. Might end up being Uncle Sam. So it's kind of the keywords are really just an extension of the left box, and the faction tags also, to an extent, are an extension of the left box. But the faction tags are also kind of, they're Dandar, they're Udgar, they're Olar, right? Realized in converting to 2.0 that we kind of wanted to have the ability to do something like that in Super HeroScape, that they neglected to take advantage of that when they put out the official game. And we were very, what would Hasbro do? Very WWHD when we started C3G, because we wanted that sense of legitimacy. We wanted to follow the path of Hasbro and try to be like the official Marvelscape. But when you get to the point where there were 10 official figures and 1,500 of your own cards, you start to develop your own aesthetic. So when we started 2.0, it was no longer what would Hasbro do? It was, what would we do if we were designing this for the first time? And we've tried to kind of let that be our guide. As you can see, it's a very different shaped card. Because if we were designing it for the first time, we wouldn't put it on hexes. The poker cards are easier to cut, and when you're cutting 1,500 of them, you want easier to cut. They're easier to store, they take up less table space, and my bias is I think they look really damn good.
And just to clarify, when you say poker cards, you mean that these are like standard playing card size?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And I've been told that the font in many cases is larger than the font on official hex cards. Away.
That sounds
So,
right just looking at it.
So Hasbro claiming during AOA we couldn't possibly put it on a poker card because nobody could read it is honestly kind of BS. But I mean, to be fair, we also aren't taking up half the card with the hit zone. Like I said earlier when I was talking about 2.0, we're mini agnostic now. We're all about accessibility. You know what Captain America should look like on your battlefield. So use your Captain America figure. We have a standard size and height for him to give you an idea of approximately what his size should be. We're not going to tell you you have to use this figure. We're just going to say, this is Captain America. Use a Captain America figure.
So on that point, how do you deal with like line of sight? I know with 2.0 that you've built your own rule set along with or your own rules on top of HeroScape. How does that work?
Yeah, we have, and that one was something that was subject of a lot of debate. That was one of the major points of contention early on. Basically, what we settled on is not going to have a specific target point. Basically, draw a line of sight like you would in HeroScape from any point in the sculpt you're using to any point in the other sculpt. But to make it more interesting, because it's like, oh, you can see the tip of my wing, that's kind of lame. We did also include obstruction rules, where if part of your sculpt is hidden when you draw that line, then you get +1 to your defense. So it's not, oh, I'm standing in front of a jungle tree, I get +1 defense, even though it makes no sense. Now it's like if you're visually limited when you're looking at that hit zone, which I found to be a pretty intuitive rule in practice. People were worried it was a little too Warhammery, a little too crunchy, but it's actually a pretty light touch. Just look for it, line of sight. If they're blocked in any way, +1 defense.
That's something I think I think I would love to see in HeroScape, and I think it would work only because of the people in the community are pretty cool, and I think that's why it would work. I've seen people argue against it for Warhammer reasons, actually.
Yeah, well, we'll see at Con how it feels in person when we're if we're all bringing our laser pointers. But on TTS, at least, I've enjoyed playing against other people with that.
I actually am in favor of that too. I think like HeroScape in almost every capacity is a much friendlier game than some other games. And if your opponent wants to angle shoot, they're going to angle shoot, and it's not just going to be on line of sight. But like, there's already, I would say in most circles where you play HeroScape, there's kind of an understanding that like, if you could make the argument that something's visible, it's visible. You know what I mean? Like people tend to err on the side of things being targetable.
Because it's more fun to actually play the game instead of to not do something.
Yeah, believe it or not, most people enjoy doing things more than they do making sure other people don't do things.
By the way,
players in the world, but you know, for the most part,
that's a major aesthetic shift that we've made from 1.0 to 2.0, which is another reason I'd suggest holding off until 2.0. Something we realized over the course of creating the game on the back of Hasbro, where there's a lot of swingy D20 auto destroy or mind control or turn shutdown type abilities, is that you get too many of these and you get things boosted up too much in armies, and you can create a lot of unfun experiences for the player where you can just kind of trap them in unwinnable situations. And we thought, okay, we don't like that. We want to move away from that in 2.0. So we've really been trying to revise cards that contributed to that play style and to really keep the focus on being able to do stuff during your turn. That's a big Sound Warp thing. So credit to Sound Warp. Players should be able to do stuff during their turn. And if you want to, nullify some of their powers during your turn so they can't do defensive stuff or things like that, that's one thing. But shutting down players' abilities to do things during their turn all the time is a really unfun experience, and we just want to move away from that.
So, would you say then that there's an emphasis on designs that are more proactive than reactive?
Not necessarily. There's certainly plenty of reactivity still. I think the idea is limiting how much you shut down the proactivity of the other player.
Okay.
So it's not that I can't react to what you're doing, it's that we want to limit how much I stop you from being able to do anything.
Right.
There's still some of that. Less. But yeah, no, here you have Human Torch. He's actually a flip card. That's another fun mechanic we have. You saw his flamed out Johnny side a little earlier. So basically, if he uses a supernova attack after that, you'd flip his card because he burned out. No more flames. But there are a couple symbols on the bottom. We've always had a flying symbol in C3G. When like 60% of superheroes fly, it turns out it saves a lot of text. Just go ahead and put that there. Because the thing about flying is it is a friggin' ton of text, but everybody knows what it does. Everybody knows what it does. Like, oh, my guy moves over here. You know what it does. It's glorified hopping. It's not true flying or whatever, but we all know how to do it. You play a unit that flies one time, understand the mechanics of flying, the weird engagement stuff. It's not written in the text for flying anyway. So we realized, hey, there are some abilities that are short enough and intuitive enough to put into symbols. So we expanded a little bit beyond flying for 2.0. I think we have something like 6 symbols. Like stealth is one, which is basically disengage. If you've played a figure with disengage one time, don't have to look up what disengage does. So you can have a stealth symbol there. You can know. Resistances and the immunities are also, I think, very elegantly done. And we don't have them on that many cards. So it's not an interaction that's going to happen all the time. It'll happen sometimes. There's a few different damage types. Like, for instance, here, Human Torch does heat damage. He flames on you. He does heat damage. He supernovas you. You do heat damage. Majority of the time, figure that he's doing damage to isn't going to care that it's heat damage. But if he's facing another Human Torch that has heat resistance, right? So green arrows up, little heat symbol means that if he takes any heat damage, he takes 1 fewer. It's -1 wound. Weakness, exact opposite, right? Martian Manhunter who has heat weakness. It's the same little symbol, but with the red arrows pointing down. He'll take +1 wound if he takes any wounds. It's really a pretty straightforward, elegant system that just sprinkles in. It's a little theme, a little bit of interaction. I'll say, by the way, in 1.0, building off of Hasbro, we didn't have heat resistance, we had lava resistance, right? Because lava is big in Hasbro. Lava doesn't matter as much as Super HeroScape, but it's big in Hasbro, right? So, and lava resistance was, hey, you don't take anything from lava. It's just completely turn off the interaction. And we built on that aesthetic, right? If somebody had a flamethrower, well, this guy doesn't get wounded when he steps into lava. He's not going to get wounded by a flamethrower at all. So shut off the interaction, which I think is kind of less exciting, right?
So why does
plus
lava
1 wound,
not
-1 wound. Oh,
my bad. I didn't mean to speak over you there. Why does lava not matter as much in C3G? You would think that with figures that were more expensive, being auto-destroyed by things would be a bigger deal.
I guess I more mean thematically. Within the comic book universe, lava is not as big a deal as it is in Valhalla. It comes up sometimes, but not more than flamethrowers or supernova special attacks or heat as a general element. So it made sense to kind of shunt lava off into a more general category for superhero lore than lava, right? Instead of being beholden to kind of that Hasbro aesthetic. Also, in terms of theme, though, right? Like Superman isn't going to get destroyed from lava. He's going to step into lava and be like, oh, wait, I'm Superman.
So
Batman will have plot armor on. He'll be fine. But so part of what C3G did a long time ago is saying, okay, if I have a 400-point figure who thematically should be completely immune to lava, but I'm going to have lava on the map, I still want some interaction. These Hasbro lava rules where like you have a 5% chance of surviving and otherwise you're auto-destroyed? That's a Hasbro rule, right?
yeah.
We're like, no. No, we're not going to do that. That's one of the official rules that we rewrote for C3G a long time ago. And actually, it's gone through a few different iterations, and it'll have a new iteration in 2.0. But suffice to say, we significantly lowered the amount of damage and the damage potential for lava, and it's still going to hurt you to get thrown into molten lava. You'll get 1, 2, 4, whatever wounds, depending on what you roll in a D20 in 1.0. We're shifting to more of a heat damage model in 2.0, which I don't remember the specifics of it off the top of my head. But idea is, rather than creating a situation where in a game full of throwers and figure movers and fast figures and thematically non-invincible figures, where you're just going to chuck everybody into lava with Magneto and instantly win as soon as your figure goes there. So rather than create that environment where it's basically, okay, we can't ever put molten lava on a map. It looks cool. We can't put it on a map, which I think a lot of the competitive maps, even in Valhalla, have come to the same conclusion. I can't really put molten lava on this map because Jotun is going to become the center of the metagame.
Right.
But rather than saying we're going to have this whole category of terrain that we just can't use in maps, we said, no, we're going to make rules that make sense. Make this playable, that give it a fun interaction, but don't make it completely overpowering. I think the 95% chance of dying when you go on molten lava makes a heck of a lot of sense as a complete Baron Pretzel game where we're just kind of rolling dice at each other and haha, that's funny. My die roll was higher than yours. You're completely dead now, and it's okay, but it's not really the gameplay we find fun in terms of something you can really sink your teeth into and enjoy for a long time.
So C3G has taken steps to make sure that lava is less effective rather than needing to be less common.
Yes, that is a great way to put it.
I mean,
lava's fun.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I wanted to clarify. I don't think that adding crunchiness or complexity to HeroScape's a bad thing. In fact, I think it's a good thing when you look at the multi-life squad design, for example, that AOA was working on, or pushing the boundary with numbers of figures in a squad. I think that adds to the complexity a little bit. But also, you can look at simple things, just like we're talking about with terrain, special terrain rules. That you can't say that doesn't add to the complexity of the game, but it also absolutely makes the game better. With Takala Jungle giving you the defense bonus, or Shadow or Road, or whatever the case may be. So yeah, I'd like to see, with Renegade picking the game back up, I'd like to see more of that get added, especially now since HeroScape's a more adult demographic, I'd say, just because we've grown up with the game. But yeah, I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, and I think that for people who are used to board gaming, who understand the rules of HeroScape, but are looking for a little bit more of an in-depth experience, C3G is a really good fit for them, especially if you want more of an emphasis on heroes instead of squads, because that's you look at Mr. Fantastic here, right? He works as the leader of a four-figure army, and they're a perfectly reasonably competitive army because we let you activate multiple unique heroes on a turn and play that way. They could stand up to squad armies rather than just being overrun. I never really bought that most of the Hasbro Marvel figures were at all competitive. Everyone's like, oh, they're so powerful. It's like, but yeah, but you're going to whiff eventually, and they only have one attack per turn. Whereas you're overwhelming them with Squadscape, right? And all the auto destroy and mind control powers, they're way more susceptible to because all your eggs are in one basket. So we really work to make hero-centered armies more viable, which I think for me makes for a more fun experience because unique heroes are more interesting than the squads.
And I hate to come in as the contrarian here. I actually kind of hope Renegade doesn't dive to this level of complexity, but I do enjoy this level of complexity in C3G. I just feel like if you were to bring Classic up to this level, you could never come back down.
I know, yeah. My suggestion was more to do like split the difference or add a little bit on top, not to go too deep. But I think for C3G this makes sense because it's not the goal is not Squadscape, which is what HeroScape kind of is predicated on in some ways. And yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense
And I
I
think
know.
there's some room for Renegade to do that, if only because like more people play board games now than they did in 2004. Like there's just kind of understanding that board games sometimes have slightly complex mechanics.
Our collective board game literacy or mechanical literacy is a lot higher, I think, as a population, and our ability to get information and digest information is just something as a population we're more skilled at, and we have more tools to do it with. Right? We had dial-up internet. When I was a kid, if you wanted to find out information on something, I mean, get to waiting. But now, you're connected to the exact right community you want for the answer so easily and so frequently. That's just a different world. By the way, any guesses on what these symbols at the bottom are, Cody? What do you think?
6 looks like resistance. Obviously the heart looks like.
Oh, you're looking at the wheel. Okay.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at the wheel. What were
This
you
is the
pointing
stat
to?
block. This is life, range, attack, defense, movement, cost.
For some reason, I
Cost,
can't
yeah.
see that. I don't know why.
Just looking down at the bottom of the card. I forgot that the stat wheel is different than
Oh,
Valhalla.
I see it now. Yeah, it was cutting off on my screen. Okay, I see it now. Yeah. Obviously, the wings are flying. And the water's probably some type of, not, I guess, a slither equivalent, maybe. Not sure.
Basically, yeah. Water affinity, which is basically Slither.
And
what
maybe
about
the fist is strength. I'm not sure.
super strength? See, 3
Super
for
strength.
3.
Okay.
Not that crunchy.
Yeah, not that crunchy. If I can get it, anybody can get it.
There we go. Right. Yeah. And I guess our set wheel, but I have to say, kudos to Arkham for really spearheading the template for the cards for 2.0. But I mean, that stat wheel is beautiful. The symbols, I think, are, to me at least, are super intuitive. I think about what for AOA they put out as, oh, we'll use these different symbols for things, and they had like just real random symbols for some of the things that they were going with. Like here's 2 swords crossed. Here's a target for, I'm not sure what it was. It's, I don't see how anyone who is familiar with HeroScape would mistranslate what these symbols are if they know it's a stat block.
In their defense, I think the 2 swords cross was actually pulled from Arena of the Planeswalkers.
Yeah.
Because that's what they used in lieu of skulls on the attack dice.
It makes sense if you're looking at the dice for AOA and they're positioned that way. It's not HeroScape though. We have skulls.
No,
we're based on HeroQuest.
I'm wondering if that was the reason.
Oh no, you're probably right. I think that they were intentionally trying to change the aesthetic of things to something else, which reminds me of their card shape pull and how they were clearly trying to fix that pull and push people towards a specific aesthetic in a very transparent and awkward way. That did not work.
That one actually, that's one thing that did bother me. I was like, why would you change it from the classic card that's so recognizable? I get it, card storage and whatnot, but CD sleeves are.
The choice they were pushing didn't really make sense for an upgrade on that level. So, yeah.
Any more brain burners?
No, yeah, I don't want to touch too much at AOA. I don't want to irritate anybody who's still mourning from that experience. But I will say that not the best example of our community in terms of how a lot of people reacted on both sides of that. So I'm glad we're no longer in crowdfunding territory. That's what I want to say. Lex, to circle back to a point earlier in terms of what I'm advocating in terms of complexity, though. I advocate that every single person go out and get really cool terrain and buy lots of terrain from Renegade. That Renegade gives us lots of cool terrain, and then play C3G.
So here's a question. Do you think that C3G might make an effort to keep up with any new terrain that's produced if it can fit in with the C3G kind of flavor?
Yeah, I mean, I think if there is usable stuff that's widespread, we'll probably use it. I don't know if the 2 life squad thing is going to be a thing with Renegade, or if we'll dip our toes in that. That it was an interesting idea, but we're not very squad focused, and we do a lot with uncommons and whatnot already. So I'm not sure if that's something we take on. Yeah, I could see doing something with those walls, or if there's a different colored terrain or something like that. We build maps, so we'll put stuff on maps. But we've added all sorts of destructible objects of our own. And in 2.0, we're doing some retheming too. Dungeon tiles are not called dungeon tiles in 2.0. They're, I believe, stone, because the dungeon theming was a little too D&D specific for a lot of the uses for maps you're actually putting them on.
Sure. So if they introduced something that was equivalent to like lava or heavy snow as a mechanic, would you guys look at it, or would you guys kind of look at how you would want to interpret it in C3G 2.0?
I think we would be more likely to look at the physical element. If they produced some plastic in a certain color that they were attaching some rule set to, I mean, we'd look at the rule set and be like, oh, that's nice. And then if we wanted to use it, we would do our own thing. But we might use the physical product just because it was something people in the community would have.
Sure.
Because it's the right scale. Scale matters.
I have a question regarding stuff coming out in the future. I was thinking about this earlier. Question more towards you, but I'd be curious what other members of C3G would say. You said earlier that when AOA was going on, there was some heartburn, I guess, and back channels about what the future was going to look like. Maybe how would you feel, or what advice? This is a better question. What advice would you give Renegade if they wanted to continue Super HeroScape as it was intended after the original Marvel set?
Good luck.
Good luck.
Because anybody who wants high quality, balanced, fun superhero-scape can already get it.
Yeah.
So
I imagine they know that too.
Yeah. I would say make it compatible with Valhalla, because your market is people who want to play Valhalla. People want to focus on superhero-scape. I think they're already with us. So I think that the IPs that they might put out are more interesting if they're focused around interactions with Valhalla, rather than feeling like some, othered outcast thing. As said, prepare for the community to, because they're IPs and they're not on Valhalla, treat them like some othered outcast thing. I think the best way they could do it is put them in the story. If you're going to have Spider-Man show up in HeroScape, have Jandar bring Spider-Man to HeroScape. They won't do it because then, thematically Spider-Man dies or whatever, and people would complain, oh, you're ruining the lore of HeroScape. But I think it's really tough to have IPs that are not fully integrated in the main thing, because then they'll always be part-timers. But if you're only going to put out one set of it, it's not really good enough to be standalone. You could play the Marvel Master Set standalone, but it's not very interesting.
Yeah.
Can't even make even armies.
I've owned the Marvel set since, I don't know, probably the year it came out, and I've never played a game exclusively with just Marvel stuff. I mean, obviously, there's not a lot to play with, and without C3G, of course. But yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it's more like a gimmick. I feel like maybe Hasbro was using it as a gimmick back when they released the Marvel set to get people that were into Marvel into HeroScape. That makes sense. But then you're kind of just wasting your time developing that when you could be developing more Valhalla HeroScape, I feel like.
I think
not to mention,
I think Marvel drew more people in than people give it credit for. I just think it came out as Hasbro was pretty much done with it. Hasbro was, on the verge of not really caring about HeroScape anymore, unfortunately.
Makes sense.
And it's possible that given another year or two, MarvelScape would have actually kept the game alive. I mean, could you imagine if there was active MarvelScape products in like the Iron Man just showed up in theaters era?
Do you say that? But I think what you're not thinking that might be the case is I think MarvelScape could have replaced HeroScape
That's possible.
because
Yeah.
I think it would have had more widespread appeal in what was going on in Valhalla. Because the properties are so popular.
Well, but we also know that Star Wars Scape was in development, and I mean, it's possible we would have got a couple years of that too before Wizards finally dropped the license in 2011, I think. So,
Haas still hanging in there, still going strong, and compatible with Valhalla if y'all want to go there.
well, so actually,
C3G, we do plan to dip our toes in Star Wars eventually, but just to make it clear, it's not a competition with Haas, who we love those guys. We have a
there's
lot
a
of
lot of
people who
interest
go
there.
back and forth between them. Yep. Our stuff would be very much designed around working within the C3G game. So kind of, like what Darth Vader is like if he's fighting superheroes, as opposed to what an army of stormtroopers marching out into Valhalla would be like.
So that's actually I did kind of want to get into that a little bit. How does that influence design? I mean, I know that you kind of conveyed the flavor, but to me, it's does that mean we see less of an emphasis, you think, on things like generic clone troopers? Right, you're more likely to see Cody than not our Cody, but Commander Cody than you would be just like some generic clone troopers, or you're more likely to see droidecas than you would be a bunch of B1s.
I mean, right now, it's very Kingdom of Hearts in terms of there's not a whole lot of people jumping up to spearhead Star Wars stuff, so it's very much to be seen. But I think in general, our aesthetic is hero with a capital H, right? Or technically superhero, right? Superhero-scape. So it's not that we don't do commons, it's not that we don't do squads, but the focus is on the heroes. So when we do squads, it's about how they interact with heroes. Do they help heroes? Do they bond with heroes? How do they interact with heroes in a way that gives them significance in the metagame? It's very rare that you're going to have an army that's just squads going out there doing their squad thing. It's usually they're designed around the heroes, with the heroes kind of being the star in the universe, right?
So
Galaxy.
let me ask you as a follow up on something that you just said there, and I hope this isn't too invasive. If it is, just stop me. Do you think it's? You said there hasn't been a lot of movement on Star Wars. Is there not a lot of Sanctum interest?
I think there's interest. It's a very big property. It's a very big property that a lot of people have a lot of emotional attachment to. And that means there's going to be a lot of different views on it. And it's interesting, right? Because I think that probably the first time that we tackled a Superman or a Batman or Wolverine, there was a lot of different perspectives on how we should tackle it, and a lot of really passionate back and forth about things. But once we designed them and we kind of had a baseline for what this type of superhero is like in our game, it became a lot easier to design things after that. But we haven't done that with Star Wars yet. Um, I will say I think it's going to be a lot easier in 2.0. Part of what happened is we started dipping our toes into it during 1.0, and we didn't necessarily have the mechanics that we really wanted to properly create synergies and teams and factions for various Star Wars characters. Whereas now I can put Darth Vader in the Galactic Empire faction, and I don't necessarily have to have a 12-page debate with somebody about which class he's going to be in and how that's going to interact with this character or that character, right? Not to say every synergy is going to be hung on factions, because it's not. We try to be more diverse than that. But at least having the availability of the faction tag is going to streamline a lot of things, make it a lot easier to figure out synergies in a lot of ways. So I think that'll help a lot. Um, then it's just a matter of these are pretty beloved characters, and we haven't really established our baseline for them yet. Um, and right now, in the fervor of 2.0, doing a lot more converting of 1.0 designs than creation of new designs. We've got 250 cards in the bank, 2.0 so far. I think around 50 or so of those are going to be in the starter deck once that comes out. So we logged a lot of stuff. Most of that is conversions of 1.0 designs to the new language, the new aesthetic, maybe with some tweaks here and there for playability. There have been a few new designs in there, but I think right now the passion is for converting stuff over so we can maintain the playability of all the stuff we loved in 1.0. Star Wars would be a completely new thing, building a faction from scratch. And that's just not where the energy is right now. May get there. Darth Vader is on my short list to do as a lead design. I'm gonna take the laser bolt on that one here eventually and see how it goes. And will probably be a slog because anytime we take on something new, it can be frustrating and difficult. But that's why we're heroes, right?
So let me ask. I know this is a brilliant question, and everybody in our audience wants to know this, and it's totally not self motivated at all. But I know that people are banging on the doors, and they want to know, when will Bionicle finally come to C3G?
We're so close, so close. Trying to think. Trying to remember if we decided we were going to release what we had finished for Bionicle in 1.0 or not. There's one more 1.0 wave coming, folks. Right now, we're waiting on card art for about 4 cards.
You would have better news on info on this than I would, but last I heard it was no.
I think it's up to Archie
like 6 weeks
ultimately.
ago, so
If fans are passionate about it, you can petition. But I would say, was hoping it would happen before con, but probably by the end of July at least, we are going to do our last release for 1.0. We've ceased all designing for it, but we do have a few things that are waiting on art still to get carded. Our most active art member has decided he's only do 2.0 if he can help it. So we're waiting on some a little less active people, and that's okay. We appreciate all their contributions. But once we get those last 4 or so cards actually carded in art and vote for them on deck, we'll be ready to go for our last release. It's going to be a big release because we're emptying the vault for 1.0. All the stuff that's just been kind of hanging on, waiting for the right thematic wave. We're saying, this is the right thematic wave. This is it. Emptying the canister. So the last of 1.0, y'all can see all the things we've been working on for years in that release. And then after that, the starter deck for 2.0. I think our plan right now is to try to do quarterly releases 4 times a year. I think we decided we were kind of oversaturating the market a little bit in 1.0, doing a big wave every month. It gets a little disheartening after a bit when the only people posting on the front page announcement are like the 6 most active people who worked on it. It's like, oh, nobody cares. So, without that kind of public engagement for the releases, I think we decided it's less is more, right? So what we want to do is have regular quarterly releases, so 4 times a year, a little bit looser on themes so stuff doesn't get stuck on deck forever. I have a saying, no more doormans, because a doorman was waiting around for the Great Lake Avengers for a long, long time, and they never came. So eventually I just said, okay, this guy's been on deck for like 4 years. We need to just put him out, right? He's finished. People should be able to play him. So my philosophy in terms of leasing designs is no more doormans. So I think what our loose plan is quarterly releases. They're not going to be tightly themed like, oh, this is the X-Men release. It's going to be the, oh, here's what we have available for you release. We might put some theming in there here and there, but here's the new stuff, right? This is our October release, or our Halloween release. Here's our Christmas release. Here's our big summer release. Well, I'm sure we'll have something on our anniversary, April 23rd, right? The day we started it all. Probably 4 times a year, and just be like, this is the new stuff. Enjoy. Hopefully, if we starve people a little bit more, we'll get a little bit more energy from the community a little bit more feedback, but I don't know. I know it works with C3V. I see posts all the time like, when are we going to get the next C3V? When are we going to get the next C3V? I'm like, we're out here giving you like a full wave a month, people. But
Well, I hope
I think
hope
that's
it doesn't cut down
I
to
know, right?
once every 15 months.
That's a great
I-
idea, by the way, because I'm constantly like when I see the constant C3G posts, I'm so lost because I obviously I haven't got into it, but it feels like dang, I'm gonna have so much to catch up on because I see it constantly, you know. But it's releasing quarterly. That's a good idea.
I will say that is kind of what got us started down the road of 2.0. So we thought, okay, we're not getting much public engagement. Should we do kind of a starter set, right? And maybe compile together some old stuff and put it into something that's more new user friendly. And then we're like, oh, we should add a comprehensive rule book that clarifies some of these things that we get angry about all the time. You know, we're doing rules errata and move means 15 different things. Like it's a turn phase and it's a figure placement and it's an action and it's all these different things. So it's all muddled and I'm not sure what it means after moving. So I mean, after you throw somebody, I don't know, right? So we'll clarify some of those things. Then we started to get into that and we thought, man, it'd be really nice if we could have some new terminology. And yeah, we just ball started rolling and we realized now's the time. You know, AOA is out here restarting it. If we're ever going to do something, now's the time to launch into 2.0. And yeah, I think we had a more refined prototype card ready to look at while they were still throwing out thought experiments in social media. And they got $1 million pledged to them. And nothing for us so far, but I believe that we can hit that too.
So, if I can actually play off a little bit of what GBC said, something I would tell anybody who's interested in C3G is to not treat it like Classic, where you feel like you need to understand what all the viable armies are. You're gonna have a really, really bad time if you do that with C3G. Just don't do it. Do it for the love of the characters. Figure out what really interests you. Figure out what some great starter armies that you think your play group would like are, and then just play those. And then when you start to feel like you could expand that a little bit, expand a little bit. I know there's a lot of people in this community who love to go over the top and who love to own everything. You'll kill yourself with C3G if you do that now, unless you take it.
I don't own everything.
There are some people who do, and they're nuts. But
that's too many mods. But yeah, that's part of what I like about the faction tag too. Is I'm hoping, and one of the aesthetics I'm pushing for on it is, hey, these are armies or groups. We call them teams now because superheroes don't fight in armies; they fight in teams. But these are teams that work well together, right? If you take stuff in this Fantastic Four tag, probably going to work fairly well with other stuff in this Fantastic Four tag. Even if they don't have direct synergy based on that faction, probably going to work well together, right? Stuff in the Justice League faction, they're probably going to work well together. You don't have to play them together. You can mix, Jandar with Udgar if you want to. Nothing wrong with that. But our goal at least is to say, hey, thematic nod, this stuff kind of goes well together. We did it together a lot when we were playtesting, and we made sure that it fit in a lot of ways, whether that's direct synergy or soft synergy.
That makes it far more approachable as someone that hasn't approached it yet. That faction tags sound like a brilliant idea.
So Japes will be happy to hear that.
I do have one more question for you, although we should be conscious of wrapping this up here shortly. You said that you had something like 250 cards in the bank. How long do you think it'll take C3G to actually wade through those in releases?
Well, like I said, the loose plan is starter deck for first release. That's around 50 something. And quarterly, my feeling at least is empty the vault every quarter.
Okay.
Reason to hold off on anything. Right now we're pumping out 20-ish cards a month. So it's going to replenish itself, and probably we'll have some mega releases in the first couple of years, but that's because we're replenishing the 1.0 library. Right. If it slows down after that, it's fine. If you got a baseline of 1,000 in your library to work with, then you don't need to have stuff coming as fast.
But you don't see yourself limiting yourself to like 50 as a release if you have 200 in the bank. Okay.
I want it.
The only reason I asked that is like coming to somebody who does have interest in designing again for C3G. The idea of like designing, knowing that it might be a calendar year out if there's already 200 things in the bank. I hope that makes sense. The question, but
Yeah. I mean, I don't have full say on that, and we don't know yet because we haven't gotten there. But my vote is for if it's ready to go, let it out. We do want to have the starter deck have some breathing room by itself as an initial thing, just to kind of establish that entry point for people. Then I imagine the cards are going to come out fast and furious after that in this quarterly releases because we have it done.
and one thing that I think is really interesting about C3G is the availability of online assets for Tabletop Simulator. Do you expect that to remain the case with 2.0?
As long as Eric's around. He's been a huge boon for the tabletop scene. I have to credit Arkham for getting me on tabletop to begin with and reminding me that best part about C3G is playing with other people, not just solo testing all the time. Between that and Con, it's really kind of reignited my passions for the game and kind of the social and community aspect of it, rather than just the this is just a project aspect. But Eric has really taken the tabletop torch, and he's got a workshop with all the 1.0 figures and cards that are released on it. I know he plans to do the same for 2.0 once it's time for that. He's been big about setting up maps and everything. A3N, with some help from Japes too, created an awesome, I don't remember what they're called, but a mod, I guess, on tabletop. Um, auto generates C3G maps. So there's a
Yes.
little thing that you can click through and auto load like 15 different maps or
Yep, the
something.
Kraken table. It's amazing.
I use a Kraken table exclusively for playtesting. I
I
used to
honestly
use
even
the.
use I honestly even use that for NGC testing sometimes because of the Wargrounds maps on it.
Yeah, it's
So
great. Got a little dice roller that Eric found searching
yep,
around tabletop, and I got my little custom dice that Arkin made for me, where there's a little bat signal for the skull and a
there you go.
Superman shield for the shield, and a little ha 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 Joker for the blank. It's great. Yeah, yeah, and the great thing about tabletop too is I've done a lot more play for fun, and that's part of what I was shouting out Arkham for. You know, he really and Eric has helped with this a lot too, and we did our Super League for a while, and we've just done a lot more enjoying of the product that we've created. Because for the most part, throughout the years, I played C3G, playtest C3G. I played Valhalla to playtest Valhalla or to compete in a tournament, right? There wasn't a whole lot of I'm playing this just for fun. It was I'm playing this as a designer. It's great to play for fun. It's great to just enjoy the thing that we've put so much work into. So I'm really glad that I've recaptured some of the spirit of that over the last few years.
No, it's a great resource, and I'm hoping to someday cyberbully Cody into playing Tabletop Simulator with me. I know I got to play here with Joe Crazy in the coming weeks, but
But if you live in Alabama and you like C3G and you want to give me one in-person friend to play with, that'd be great. But I've survived this long without one.
one of these days they're going to send me up there for work, and I'm going to have to let you know ahead of time. Have to see if we
You
can
go.
put a game in or something.
Welcome to come hang out.
I live up in Maryland, so that's a bit of a trek for me, but
No worries, no worries. You got Mr. Nobody over in Atlanta. I gotta hang out with him someday.
Is he in Atlanta?
Yeah.
I did not know that. I've been actually. I should have hit him up. I've been in Atlanta recently for work too. I'll have to
There you go.
actually reach out to him. That's
Here in
going to
Texas,
Austin. I
lots
haven't met
of
up with Japes.
escapers in Texas.
Yeah, so they say.
But I'm gonna see a lot of these guys in Tennessee next week Friday.
There you go.
can I ask where in Tennessee? Is this like Gatlinburg area, perhaps?
You can ask.
Ah. Gatlinburg's a pretty cool place. I'm just saying. If
It's
you guys know.
the Nashville area.
Oh,
People
okay.
don't realize
Okay.
how wide
It's a
Tennessee
little rental.
Yeah.
It's got like 2 different time zones, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Is it one of those? Yeah.
I mean, you can like drive diagonally like 13 hours across the state. It's crazy.
You hate yourself.
Or if you ever had to move from Pennsylvania to Texas by car.
Or if you don't know the area very well and you're going down to the University of Alabama from Michigan and you think, oh, I'll go to Memphis, that'll be fine. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I'm in Arkansas now. And you're like, oh, I don't know how to get back. So I'm just going to drive from Memphis back to Nashville and then drive south.
Yeah, you can. I
This
mean,
was not a
Memphis is
good day.
like right over the border. Like I travel there once a year for HeroClix Worlds, and it's like you're in Arkansas, and then suddenly you're in Memphis.
There you go. So would you say it was your love of HeroClix that got you interested in C3G?
No, I've always loved super. I mean, I've always loved superheroes. I was definitely like. I remember I used to like have school lunches in like I used to have take my school lunch and just go to the library, and I would like jump in the computer lab and just Wikipedia things, and it would end up being like, okay, I know who Spider-Man is. Who the hell is the Prowler? Because like in 2006, 2007, that wasn't like a known character, right? So I would just click Wikipedia page to Wikipedia page to Wikipedia page to Wikipedia page, and then like I just ended up with this kind of like knowledge base of characters. And I'd played HeroClix before that. I actually like got into that game when it was still sold in electronic boutiques and Walden Books, which shows the age of that game at this point. Um, but that really helped cement my interest in it. And then from the HeroClix community, I reignited my interest in HeroScape because the Marvel sets came out, and I thought the figures looked just way better than what was being done in HeroClix at the time. And yeah, I think for that it was just like I always had a HeroClix play group. Like there were always people around me, and yeah, I mean it's almost like what y'all do with C3G. At this point, I'm playing HeroClix because once a year I get to travel to Memphis and see friends who I've known for 20 years now.
Yeah. I will say HeroClix is definitely an underrated part of our success as a group. I think in the early days, they had stopped production on it for a bit,
They did.
and we weren't sure what we were going to do. But then they came back before all the aftermarkets had dried up. And they started producing new stuff, and it really helped sustain us. Just having that easy source of superhero minis.
Yeah, and
Probably a big reason why we're going mini agnostic in 2.0 is it's kind of scary to be beholden to another product like that.
yeah, the history there is kind of weird. Basically, the licenses like Star Wars, which WizKids was also dealing in, got really expensive overnight for games, which is why Wizards also dropped it. And Tops, who owned WizKids, who made HeroClix at the time, it's like, well, y'all pretty much just have HeroClix, and your other games aren't doing that great, and we're just not interested in supporting it. So they just killed WizKids, which killed the HeroClix license, and then eventually NECA picked it up. So, but yeah, that's like I think you guys are on the right page because I just don't think that there will be pre-painted miniatures forever. I wouldn't even be surprised if there weren't readily available, affordable pre-painted miniatures in 10 years.
Yeah.
Like,
And yeah, like I'll tell you, it's as much as it's going to be a challenge to spearhead the Masters of the Universe faction, which is my passion for new stuff in 2.0. It's going to be a lot easier without needing pre-painted minis to put on cards because I got a whole lot of unpainted minis from a Kickstarter. I'm going to use those, but if I had to make sure to get them all painted to be photographed to put on a card before we could produce the card,
it would be nuts if a customs group made sure that every single custom they had to be painted and then photographed and then put on a card. I would hate anybody who volunteered to do that for their own customs group.
well, we did it 1,500 times or so, so I feel your pain.
Well, I'm sure it would have been slower if y'all had to paint them too, every single one of them.
That's true. Yeah, there wasn't that much painting. Some modding, some painting, but mostly HeroClix.
Yeah.
What's funny is that's my expectation for Renegade. I want painted minis on my card. But they're not a they're getting paid a salary to do that.
That's true.
You know.
Yeah, if those idiots at NGC can do it, I don't see why Renegade couldn't. So actually that does raise a question for me. You said that now that you guys don't care about pre-painted miniatures, what's the alternative? Are you guys just okay with now? Well, let me ask this a different way. Are you guys also opening the floodgate to include unpainted mass-produced miniatures is mass produced no longer a requirement? Is 3D printing on the table? Like what? How open are the floodgates now with 2.0?
We are making the cards. Cards say this is medium 5, etc. You're responsible for the minis. Bring what you want to the table to use with that card. I'm not in your house. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You're an adult. Use the minis you want. We never made the minis, right? We were never producing the minis. We were just pairing minis with cards and putting them on the cards. Now that we're not putting them on the cards, who are we to tell you what to do?
So there's no concern as to mini accessibility then?
You have accessibility to all the minis that you have. I mean, we were never selling them. So no, not really. And we're big on proxying, right? The point is to play the card and have fun with the card. If it's a huge bugaboo to you that your miniature doesn't look exactly right, it's fine. But that's your bugaboo, right? I'm not going to tell you not to enjoy the card if you don't have a concern.
Sure.
Play with whatever you can find. Like with 2 balls of wax if you want to. Hope you just enjoy the cards that we're using. And also remember, we're designing for ourselves. We have a ton of minis. We don't all have the minis that were on the cards for 1.0. Some people like a different Batman figure, right? Some people like a different Captain America figure than what was put on the card, or they bought a different one, or they found a different one for cheaper. Now they're like, well, I know this is Batman. It goes with this card.
What I'm trying to ask is, I seem to remember there being a focus in 1.0 at least that there needed to be some sort of mini available, right? And generally that was a modding option, right? Like we understand how you would mod this and we can demonstrate how you would do it and we present a guide. First off, well, let me finish the question, I guess. Or there were pre-painted minis available, or I know there was even some discussion of, okay, in this instance, 3D printed is fine. And I know Bionicle was actually one that you guys kind of made the 3D printed exception for. Are you saying that in 2.0, it's not really a concern how people get the mini, or if there's one available?
We are with each card putting out a suggested mini to go with it.
Okay.
I think that if we were not able to give a suggested mini, then we might struggle to pass that design. So far, it hasn't come up. Nobody's tried to do something completely without a mini. It may come up someday. For me personally, I want to make cards that people can have fun with and trust them to figure out how to do it. Like I'm not recommending a specific printer that you use to print the cards or a specific pair of scissors. So as long as you know what the figure is that goes with that card, it makes you happy.
Gotcha. Okay.
That said, if it's a medium 5 card and you use a figure that's like 12, levels tall, it may affect your gameplay experience. And the rule book mentions that, do that at your own risk.
Fair enough. Well, Cody, did you have any other questions you want to ask? I think that was pretty much it for me. We've eaten up a lot of y'all's time.
No, I think I'm good on questions. I just I'm excited to see what 2.0 brings. I'm excited to learn more about C3G. Again, as someone that hasn't really gotten into it, I'm not really big into superheroes as much. I do enjoy movies and stuff like that, but I've never really gotten super into other aspects of it, like board games and such, other than MarvelScape, of course, because it's HeroScape. Although I'm a huge fan of Spawn. I don't know if you guys have a. Do you guys have a Spawn? You do.
Oh, yeah, Spawn's fun.
Okay, I love Spawn, and I also love God, why am I blanking on the name? Deadpool, of course. I'm a fan of like the anti-heroes. Oh, Blade. I don't know if does Blade fall into. Oh, he does. Okay, well there we go.
Yeah.
That's my first few figures I'll get.
Three Deadpools in 1.0. Haven't converted Spawn yet, but yeah, we need a Spawn aficionado in our ranks because we only ever did Spawn. We didn't do any of his surrounding characters, mostly because the majority of us can't name another character in Spawn other than Spawn.
What about Clown Joe? Isn't that his villain or something? Clown Man?
Isn't
like
Pit
Indicator or something? Or maybe I don't know.
I think Pit is Spawn. But yeah, Spawn is awesome. I'll definitely, maybe that'll be the first C3 C3G card I get and figure.
There you go. Check out 1.0's version of Spawn. I still endorse him. Just take a look, pique your interest.
Yeah,
But
I'll do that.
hopefully got some people to at least think about checking out C3G. And kind of like Lex was saying earlier, no wrong place to start if you're interested. Just pick characters that seem fun to you. We're not really a highly competitive tournament based group of people. Just like doing stuff that's fun.
I like
you
it.
pulled out your favorite Batman and Superman robot piece as though he isn't competitively viable.
All right, less so with some changes to Justice League Flash.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So in 1.0, Justice League Flash could pilot this sucker, give him +4 to his movement because Justice League Flash can push everybody around. He can't push around destructible objects anymore in 2.0. Only characters.
That's probably the right play.
Yeah, because he was basically driving in super speed, which is fun, but probably made him a better pilot than like, dedicated pilots. So wasn't really fair.
Are there a lot of pilots? What else would you pilot?
Oh, I don't have a Gundam idea. That's right, we got Gundam.
We need to go Sound Warp shoutouts here.
Yeah, right. We were doing a testing earlier, and we counted off 1 to 7. That would have driven him nuts because that man loves the number 8. So close.
Fair enough. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Oh, sorry, Nick. That cut off.
I say that. Thank you for inviting me in, and if y'all ever want to talk to anybody else from C3G, I'm sure I could send somebody your way.
We'd really appreciate that. Thank you. We'll keep that in mind.